So I am delighted that we have our three ward councillors here. Andre Fries on my left, Penny Frost and Gareth Richards on my right. You can work out which is which, I'm sure. Ellie was going to brief me. No, there are no other councillors in the room. I needed to know that. So the idea of this evening is really to give you an opportunity to hear about what the council is about, what their plans are, and to have a say and influence that, and to ask questions. Because the council is committed to working with local communities and to give everyone an opportunity to have their say. So this is one of a whole series of events with ward councillors. My job is to make sure that we run to time, that we don't overrun, that everyone has an opportunity to have a say who would like to, that the issue does not become political. This is not a political event. They're not representing political parties tonight. It has nothing to do with Brexit. And there's actually a legal point there. Because there is an election in May, the council cannot discuss anything to do with Europe or Brexit. So if you ask a question about Europe or Brexit, it's actually ruled out. I'm afraid it cannot be asked. And if you have any concerns or issues, look at the council website or talk to one of the council officers at the back of the room about the practical issues of the election. So it's my job to shut that down if someone wants to go there. So there will be opportunity to hear others speak, there will be opportunity to have your say, and at the end of the meeting there's an opportunity to have an input about ward-based budgets, which you'll hear a little bit more about later. Practicalities, the fire exits are the way you came in is the main one, but I cannot, in my wildest imaginings, imagine the back of the hall being set on fire. But should that be a problem and you can't get out that way, then there is another fire exit ahead and to the right. There's a doorway just through there and through those doors. The agenda is this. So from now for the next 5, 10, 15 minutes, depending on how long they speak, the local councillors will tell you something of what has been done and is being done locally in the ward. Then 3 people have sent in written questions. So each of them will have their chance to ask those questions and members of the panel will have a chance to answer them. If you want to pitch in at that point and say, oh, can I add a supplementary to that, that's okay. As long as it's not about Brexit. And then, after those 3 questions have been asked and answered, there is an opportunity for any questions from the floor. Now, this meeting is being recorded and filmed. It's important you know that. Firstly, be aware of that when you speak. But also, it does mean you have to speak into the microphone. And one of the council officers, Ellie, who's at the back, has a microphone, and she will make sure you speak into that. Really important. You don't say, oh no, it's all right, I've got a good strong voice. It needs to be recorded. Then at 8:45 at the latest, depending on how many questions you ask, we will wrap up with a final comment from the panel and a chance to contribute to the exhibition. And by 9 o'clock we will be showing you the door, if you're still here. Please, could you, if you haven't signed in at the back of the room, make sure you sign in the sheet that's making it its way round you during the course of the meeting. They would love as many people as possible to fill it in, and please, particularly if you're a doctor and used to signing prescriptions very fast, make your signature legible so that they can see who you are. So I think that's all the preliminary comments that I need to make. So, ward councillors, I'm sure you have worked out an order between yourselves how you're going to tell us what has been done, what is being done. Let's start on the right there.
Okay, usually it's ladies first, but in this occasion I'll go first. Well, since we got elected, we've the Richmond Council has managed to sort of tarmac at least one road, Lock Road, which is probably the nicest road to cycle down in the borough now. If you've got a list of what other roads need doing, which unfortunately is probably most of them, then yeah, just let us know and we'll try and badger Alex Ehrman to do them. He's not here, so we can badger him. we can ask him. It was pleasing that the Quiet Way has started being built, and they've actually built a section of it in Hardwick Road, which has really shown that Hardwick Road could also do with a piece of fresh blacktop as well. And what else have I been doing? Promoting cycling in the borough, because I'm your cycling champion, and and the other thing I've got involved with is if anyone here would like to do a play street for Car Free Day on the 22nd of September. We would like to get as many play streets going in Ham as possible, where you can just open the street and have your children play on there, and it's a great opportunity for neighbours to meet and sort of see what the street can really be like without having a whole load of cars on it, really. And who shall I hand over next to?
You can hand over to me if you like.
Okay, and here's Penny Frost.
Thank you.
What she's been up to.
Right, well, I mean, I was first elected 4 years ago, and then, just been re-elected this last time with the new team, and I hadn't realised what halcyon, carefree days it was when we were in opposition, and we could spend a lot of time working on local projects, and I could rattle through a lot of the things which I had a hand in during the previous 4 years that I was your councillor, including the sort of resurfacing of the towpath and other, whole lot of other projects. Since I was re-elected, of course, we took the council, and so I then got a role, which was a borough-wide role as a cabinet member for children's services and schools, which has just been turned into chair of the Children's Services and Education Committee, because we're moving as a council from cabinet posts to committee structure, which we feel is a more democratic way of making decisions within the borough. So I've been much more involved now in the last year with aspects which are very, very important, but they're not sort of specifically limited to our ward. But it's areas like safeguarding, the new safeguarding arrangements for children and young people, for schools, for school admissions and school numbers, and new school build, special educational needs. So all of these things, I mean, you'll be aware of within our ward, but I've got a wider responsibility as well, which I have to say has been really, really interesting. But it makes me much more reliant on my two colleagues now locally to ensure that they're, making sure that you have a local environment which is right for you.
Okay. Thank you. So, following on a bit from what Gareth was saying about resurfacing roads, sorry, it seems very loud. Church Road was resurfaced, which I live down at Latchmere Lane, so that's been a pleasure for me. Another nice road to cycle on. And unfortunately, but it's sort of tying in with that. At the end of last year, beginning of this year, the council officers did a lot of work on something called the Livable Neighbourhood Bid, which was a bid to Transport for London to ask for a large chunk of money to help make Ham and Petersham a much more walking and cycling friendly part of the borough. And unfortunately, we didn't get that money. Some of the feedback we got was possibly our bid wasn't ambitious enough. They felt it was probably smaller, they felt maybe too many small changes and not enough big infrastructure projects, which was not necessarily the feedback we'd got from them beforehand about what kind of projects to bid for. So I know that the forum, some of the members of the forum who worked very hard on that bid, Justine sitting here this evening, has been talking to the committee members of Ham Parade Market. I'm sure many of you go to the market, and they're looking at ways that some of the ideas that they had from the livable neighbourhood, how we could maybe look for community funding for those to try and make our parade much more user-friendly for everyone. One of the things that has come up recently is Warner's Lane, the back at the little road that joins Riverside Drive with Ham Parade. I was able to get half of that tarmacked, which is great, and I did ask if we could get the other half tarmacked, but unfortunately we were told because it's a public right-of-way, they could only fix it like for like. As it's currently sort of gravel and stone, they could only put down more gravel and stone. So we're looking at how we could try and get around that, and we might look at trying to get some funding from somewhere else to try and get that tarmacked, and then maybe the council will look after it in future. So one of the big projects that we have been talking about, and the council did a consultation on, was the bridge. I know a lot of people have discussed and have thought about and mooted and put forward the idea of a bridge from Ham to Twickenham, or from Hamlands over to Radnor Gardens. And I don't know how many of you filled out the consultation that happened end of last year, beginning of this year, but we have the results of the consultation, and there were 981 responses. 956 of those online, further 25 on paper. Over 8 in 10 respondents, 82% of those who responded, support the idea of putting a new cycling walking bridge somewhere in the borough to improve connectivity, because we are the only borough in London that actually sits either side of the Thames. And as I'm sure many of you know, we are limited by the big gap between Richmond Bridge and Kingston Bridge and Teddington Lock, and then the bridges further down. The two main suggestions were one from Ham to Twickenham to St Margaret's, and the other one from Radnor Gardens to Hamlands. And the one from Ham Street to St Margaret's did actually come out just a little bit on top. So I'm not sure what the next steps are here on that one. There are certainly no funds at the moment, unfortunately, to put that bridge in. Whether you think it's unfortunate or not, I know people agree or disagree with the idea of a bridge there, but it is something the council's still looking at, and I personally support it. I think the three councils have different views on that. I would love to see a bridge there, a nice, beautiful, shiny glass wooden structure connecting the two sides. But if you support it, let us know, and we'll see what we can do to try and make that happen somehow. Thank you.
Hang on, sorry. If you want to ask a question, you need to have the microphone.
Yeah. Go on, there's one coming for you.
Would you put your hand up?
I just wanted to know whether this bridge is for cyclists only or for cars as well.
It would be for pedestrians and cyclists, not for cars. No, we don't want more cars going down Ham Street over to Orleans Park. Absolutely not. Thank you.
Had you finished the things you were going to say? Yes.
Yes, I think I've finished.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Someone's question over there.
Is it a direct follow-up from those?
It's the bridge.
Yes, okay, the bridge.
Yeah. Just want to know, have you got any idea if you can get the funding, and where will it come from? Or is it just something that might happen in the next 100 years or so?
It's one of those things that I think, in an ideal world, TfL would like to support more bridges, Transport for London, would like to see more cycling and walking bridges across London, and I certainly filled out a consultation recently asking what I personally think their priority, not just me, but went to lots of councils, lots of people, Transport for London asked what people think, and one of the things they asked was, do you want to see more cycling and walking bridges? I think if they decide that's their strategy to improve connectivity in London, they will find the money. At the moment, certainly the borough, Richmond Council does not have the money for it. I think if we were to look for it, it would have to come from TfL or for some outside source. Unfortunately, as we all know, budgets are very straitened at this particular time. So I would love to see it. I'm sure if we got a big campaign going, we could make something happen, but I don't see it happening in the next few years, sadly.
Well, good luck anyway.
And unless, of course, one of you here wins the lottery
Yes, absolutely.
in the next couple of weeks, and you'd like to pass the money on to the council. Question at the back.
Thank you. The the decision on the bridge went in favour of Ham Street to Orleans Pleasure Gardens. Does that now mean that the survey will stand, if a bridge was to be built, that would be the place? Or is it still open?
I think it's still open. I think I would say that until such time as the council decides or TfL decides that a bridge needs to be built in this borough, I think that the location is still open. I think the consultation that they did seemed quite good. They looked at all the different parts that they could look at. A lot of the other places had to be discarded because the sites were on private land or the cost was too high. So Ham and Petersham certainly has some of the least connectivity with other parts of the borough. So from that point of view, from a necessity point of view, it seems the ideal place. But at the moment, yes, those who responded, which was 981 people in the borough, said yes, we would like, out of those 80% said yes, we'd like to see the bridge, and the proportion of that said yes, we'd like to see the one from Ham Street, but that's no final decision.
Yes, Penny Frost.
I would just like to come in here really because I'm one of the people who have got all sorts of concerns about the effect on the local wildlife and the areas of Ham lands which would be affected if we did put a bridge in. And I really want to say that it is very, very far from being something which is currently a possible project. There is no funding. It's an idea that's been mooted in different forms a number of times, but we are not actively in a position to consider an additional footbridge because at the moment there ain't the money.
No.
So when you go home tonight, don't say, "Oh, the one thing I learned is they're going to build a bridge." That's not what you've heard. So I'm going to move on then to the three written questions which were sent before the meeting. And if you are one of those three people, just to warn you, I'm going to take them in reverse order. I could explain why, but I'm just going to. So Nicola Betts has a question to ask. Here in the second row on this side.
I live in Cleves Road and these alleyways run adjacent to my property and then further up to access to Ashburnham Road here. But the alleyways themselves really need some maintenance. So there's loads of overhanging bushes and branches actually making it at some points extremely hard to pass through. There's also loads of fly tipping that's going on, taking place with one corner in particular being really bad, with various household appliances and general rubbish making it really unsafe to walk through. And the pavements themselves are also really uneven, so it's quite difficult with buggy to get past in the alleyways. And also because we live attached to one of these alleyways, we know that they're used quite heavily, so actually if any investment could be made, it would definitely be appreciated by a number of residents. So I just wanted to know who was responsible for maintaining them and if any improvements can be made, because we've only just recently moved to the area, so not sure.
Well, I've been assigned to answer that question. As it happens, I don't know if you know Ham and Petersham SOS. They're the group that help with elderly people in the area, taking them shopping and doing social activities. And they had an Easter party back at the beginning of April. And as it happens, one of the residents raised that very issue with me there, and I have started communicating with RHP and also with the council. And it's become very clear that it's actually RHP's issue.
Right.
I have just had an email this week, or end of last week, beginning of this week, from Caroline Hands, who's the head of community services, and she said the RHP inspection team will be out this week to clear the rubbish and enforce against any identified transgressors. I hope that means that they're going to get clear of the rubbish, and unfortunately, then unless they can find identifiable marks on there who's dumped it, it's nothing's going to happen in terms of trying to take charge of those people. But at the end of the day, if any of you see anyone fly tipping, do try and report it immediately, either to the police or through to ourselves with the councillors' emails. I will take this on, as it's something I've already raised. It is RHP. I did mention to them the overhanging branches. I did mention to them the pavement, but they haven't come back to me on that. But I will take that up and if I can get your details, Nicola, afterwards, I'll follow that up with you. Yeah?
I mean, since I submitted this, I think someone's actually gone and cut a lot of the branches down. So
right, okay.
I don't know who it was.
Okay, well,
but yeah.
No, I haven't been out, only my own garden actually this weekend, finally got out. But thanks for that, and I am aware, we are aware it's a problem. We will try and get it tackled for you and for everyone else.
Happy? Right. Follow-up question?
David Williams, this was a problem when I was first elected as a councillor in 1974. These are never been maintained by either the housing department of the council up to 2000 or Richmond Housing Partnership since then. And the problem is exacerbated because a lot of these are through alleyways between Ashburnham Road and Lovell Road to Cleves Road to Mead Road. And the same is true on the Petersham ex-council estate as well, which means there are more people going through there, which is a bigger need to keep them clear. The fundamental problem is that there is no maintenance schedule for these alleyways, and it's only complaint driven that anything happens about it. And like graffiti, if you get dumping and you don't clear it up straight away, you will get more. So RHP resisted for 40 odd years and having a regular maintenance schedule, and good luck to Andre to give them a really good kick to succeed if you can.
Well, if you didn't succeed, David, thanks for that. I'll do what I can.
Thank you. Klaus Niederberger is at the back.
Yeah, we had since the 1st of April this year, throughout April, we had every 3 to 4 minutes very low-flying airplanes on the riverside going straight across Ham. And I think towards the end of April, when I was here at the local Tesco's just across the street, there was an aircraft coming over the building. I had to duck. It was unbelievable. It has calmed down now over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, that's true. But the residents in my street, at least, I mean, they're all really worried that it was maybe a test phase of Heathrow, and they might actually sort of have more and more aircraft coming over Ham. And what can be done to actually stop this?
Gareth Richards, I believe, is going to.
Well, I'm told, and I'm not an aircraft person, that depending on which way the wind is blowing, dictates where the airplanes have to go when they take off. So if the wind is blowing easterly, they have to take off, and then they turn over Ham. Whereas if the wind is blowing the other way, then they just sort of cruise in over a queue and then land on Heathrow. There was an experiment that they did a couple of years ago that seemed to put a lot more flights over Teddington, but over Teddington and Ham. But there seemed to be so many complaints when they did that they stopped. So I'm not aware that they've changed their flight profiling to sort of target a particular area. It's just unfortunate that we've had a lot of days where the wind requires takeoffs in that direction. As you know, there's a possibility of a third runway at Heathrow. I don't know if this is too political to talk about.
Go for it.
It's not Brexit, so that's okay.
And the Heathrow are trying to build a third runway, and we, the council, are against that. But we lost our court case, and we lost our case in the High Court to stop this. We're considering, Richmond and the other councils to do with the case are considering about whether or not to appeal that and go to court again. Until then, there's sort of nothing we can do, and hope that Heathrow don't do this to us too often.
I mean, the east wind is I don't know what to say about this.
Yeah.
because I'm a local resident for the last 15 years. We never experienced it like this, and I'm sure it's not the first time now that we have east wind. I think the problem might also be, and well, probably definitely is, that they're very, very low flying. I mean, Heathrow is not just around the corner. I mean, it's a few miles away. And what I don't understand is, even if they use the flight path and hamster the flight path, that they don't actually climb to an altitude where they don't disturb us.
Well, I'm not an expert with airplanes, but I guess if they tried to climb earlier, then it would make someone else's life more miserable under that particular part of the flight path.
I don't get that. Why? If they just go up?
Because if they then when they take off, well, the whole of Heathrow is surrounded by residential housing.
Yes,
so when they take off, they then sort of make people in Sunbury or Hampton a little bit noisier.
Around Heathrow, I mean, everybody knows that they live next to Heathrow. They also got subsidies for, I don't know, triple glazing and whatever. So, I mean, we are in a totally different situation, because, I mean, lots of people here, I'm sure they live here because of being sort of rural, close to the town, that sort of thing. And, you know, if suddenly the flight path is right above your head, there must be a reason, except the east wind, you know?
Well, it's certainly there's a website that you can ask Heathrow, and they will be able to tell you.
Well, I'd just like to know if the council is aware generally of noise pollution through aircraft, and if the council is actually on our side and communicates with Heathrow and try to actually change the situation. Well, I can, of course, I can go on Heathrow's website, but I get standard answers like the east wind.
Sorry, just to jump in here. Unfortunately, the easterly does make a big difference. I've lived over the river. My parents live on Strawberry Vale, in Strawberry Hill on the Twickenham side, and it definitely makes a huge difference in when the winds change, and you do get that period of time when you're just getting the planes constantly, and where they are is that bit closer. Unfortunately, there's a group. Well, okay, not unfortunately. There's a group called TAG, Teddington Action Group, who started up a few years ago when they tried to do what they sort of call, it's more like funneling, where rather than spreading the planes out, they narrow it down. And they do that over City Airport, and you end up having a small corridor of homes that are complete, people's lives are ruined by this continual takeoff and landing. And they started doing that in Teddington, and at that point everyone just went, no, we're not having this. So Heathrow has continued to spread it out. But the problem is apparently because of the new planes that have come in, they require a longer ascent and descent, which is why they're flying lower at the moment. So we've had those two things come together. I do know the council has been very active on this. Obviously, we had the court case this week, and I also know that, so I was up at the climate emergency demo rally last week when the Parliament was debating it, and Friends of the Earth, who took part in the appeal, took part in the court case with Greenpeace, the Mayor of London, and the 4 or 5 councils, have already said they're going to appeal the decision against the third runway at Heathrow. Unfortunately, all we're trying to do is stop the next set of planes coming in. What we can't do is stop the ones that we've already got. Unfortunately, I mean, I know what happens here is they're allowed to fly up to 11 o'clock at night. If you get any going over the 11 o'clock barrier, then absolutely contact them, email them and complain. But unfortunately, they're allowed to fly up until, I think, 6 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. And those are the hours.
We had it from 8 o'clock to midnight, really.
If it's after 11 o'clock, you should absolutely complain, because that's meant to be their cut-off.
Hang on.
Can we give you a microphone just so that everyone can hear you?
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you very much. Okay. I think I'm going to change myself to an airplane, Heathrow.
Excellent. We'll join you.
Did you hear, sir, that the comment about the new planes is a partial answer to your question, because it's saying they are flying, you're not mistaken, they are flying lower than you thought because there's a new design of...
At the 737 MAX.
Lady on the right.
I was just going to say, Heathrow themselves have if you're on Twitter, they've got Heathrow Noise, which twice a day or 3 times a day, they tell you what they're doing.
Okay.
Eastleigh, they're switching to Eastleigh or it's Westerleigh. But they tell you that the flights are finishing around 11:30 and are starting on the runways at 4:30. You can look at the Twitter page right now,
Okay.
because that's what they do. And also the cargo planes go up to 1 o'clock in the morning, and those are the big, heavy, rumbly ones that make your windows shake.
Right.
They go until 1, so there's probably about 4 hours where there's no planes going. But they say themselves that the planes are starting up at 4:30, or landing and taking off at 4:30 and going up to 11:30.
Okay, I don't disagree with you. I must admit, I thought that they were meant to give respite between 11 and 6. Okay.
Yeah, well, but anybody can have a look at the other thing is that these, they tell you when they're switching from Eastleigh to Westerleigh. Not that helps, because you can't do anything about the wind.
Maybe.
But they do say that also the Eastleigh is only 20% of the year, so in Ham, we're supposedly only affected, the last few weeks it's been quite cold, there's been an easterly wind, but it's now gone off, so there's kind of westerlies now for the foreseeable future. We can't hear any planes overhead.
I think they think 30% easterlies is what they quote. So
So
we're
somewhere on that tag. Tag page,
but we're relatively protected actually
Exactly,
because of
A comment or question from...
So, because we have been very affected in April, I did a bit of research on the Heathrow website, and there's a lot of statistics you can look at. So in April there was 77% easterly winds, that was quite outstanding. And that's fine, I mean, nothing we can do about that, right? On the other hand, when you look at the 6 flight paths that go when there's easterly operation, one of them goes over Ham. And while 10 years ago, there was about 23% of easterly operations going through this flight path, which is called DET. Now it's about 28%. So it has increased. And I was wondering whether there's any political component attached to that, because 5 percentage points out of 23, that's quite a lot, I would say. And that's something to really observe, and maybe also as a council to get active and maybe ask how that could be. That would be my question as well.
It's quite possible.
Because,
if more people complain, then they would shift.
I'm not doing that, but maybe it's just to also bring that to your attention, and something to really observe. Because there are the 5 flight plans apart. On the other hand, there's also only the southern start ramp used when it's easterly operations. They all start from the southern runway and not from the northern runway, because there's one village in the north that has achieved over 50 or 60 years that is not allowed. This agreement is not on anymore since very shortly. It's a Cranford agreement, and I've been challenging as well to what extent now the traffic is distributed among the 2 runways, but apparently it will take a few years until that runway is ready. I think that's maybe one of the things that, as a council or as a community, we could maybe also check whether there's any possibility now to distribute the starting planes, easterly operations, in a different way, that Ham is going to be less affected.
Can I just very quickly come in here, because the chairman's just whispered in my ear that we need to get on, and it was just to say that we do have an officer at the council who's got a very primary responsibility for monitoring aircraft noise and monitoring flight paths, etc. So if you want to follow up with the officer, then do get in touch with us later and we can put you in touch with him. But it is active, it's very actively monitored, in case you think that we're just being sort of like complacent about it. We're not.
And it sounds like if you want to see things change, make your voice heard and speak out to Heathrow. Coming then to the third and final question that was asked beforehand, Christopher Pedler. Is he here? Right. Well, I will summarise his question. What is happening about the development at Ham Close? I will just stop there.
And I'm going to answer it because you'll know that
Sorry, before you do, can I just say you're very welcome to come back and ask other questions because he's not here to ask follow-up.
Well, the proposal for the regeneration of Ham Close goes back a long way, as you'll remember. It goes back to about 2013, I think, because it's been evident for some time that the buildings themselves are not, although they're strong and sturdy in their day, but a lot of concrete was used in them. They're no longer considered to be fully fit for purpose, and for many people living in Ham Close, they are experiencing problems of too much moisture, mildew, damp. They don't have a fire exit. They don't have disabled access. So they are very much kind of old-style housing, and so it's been intended for a long time for Ham Close to be redeveloped. Slightly complicated because, of course, the council owns the land and the RHP owns the properties, and so the redevelopment is being done in terms of a partnership. In order for the close to be redeveloped without this awful word decanting people, without taking them out of their homes and making them go and live somewhere else while the rebuild takes place. We want to avoid that. So in order for that to happen, the rebuild will have to take place alongside the current building. So you rebuild a block, knock down one, move people in, etc. In order for that to happen, there's got to be a bit of rejigging of land, which has complicated things. There is also a strip of land needs to be bought from St. Richard's School. Now, parents have actually given their permission for this, but because you can't just go around appropriating school playing fields, that has to be agreed by the Sports Council and whoever else. And so that process is all being gone through at the moment. When the RHP had developed a set of plans which people looked at and said, no, we don't really like those. So they went back and they worked on it to get better housing, more houses with more sort of architectural interest and style. And so that's on the website, on the the RHP Ham Close website now, which you can have a look at. Decisions haven't been made yet about the community buildings, which will also need to be replaced, like the youth centre and maker labs and so forth. But then another snag was hit, which nobody was expecting, and this is called the Faraday case. And it's if you're a planner, you probably understand this, but I don't think I do. But it's about how development agreements are made between owners and developing partners, and because of a particular case which came up and made case law, RHP has had to change the way in which they were going through their procurement. So they thought they'd gone down the road for managing their procurement. They're having now to re-procure in order not to fall foul of this piece of case law. So it's still on its way. That process is still churning its way through. But that's been the cause of the latest delay. And it's a great shame. And it's a great shame for the people who are living there, who are saying, come on, get on with it. You've promised us new housing. Let's see it. But it's still being worked on and being moved forward, but more slowly than we were hoping.
Yeah, it's on its way.
Can you tell me who you're going in partnership with? Housing association?
There are 3 developers. I can't remember their names at the moment because that's being, and that whole thing is being sort of gone through at the moment. So it's not been.
So are these going to be affordable housing, or are you going to keep the rents at the rates of what the residents are paying now?
Well,
because you haven't got them informed on that their rents are going to double. Should you go into a partnership with the housing association?
No, it's as nothing has changed on that score. So it's as was set out previously, and you'll see it's on the RHP website.
You've asked the residents to use South Acton estate to go and have a look at, which is what's been redeveloped, and that's what you're proposing to do on Ham Lands. Now, about 75% of that has gone to private ownership.
It's exactly
and
as
of the people
was
that they moved out of buildings that are brought off the council were put into highly inflated prices of flats. That the council, the money they paid them for their flat, only left them with about 63% in a shared ownership scheme.
in the new the proposals for the new build includes all of the people who are currently renting from RHP. They will continue to have their social rent.
Yeah, but you change them from a council tenant to a housing association, and their rent's near on double.
Well, they're already.
I know that this has happened.
Yeah, they're already in a housing association. RHP is.
Yes, but that was taken over by Richmond Council. That was taken from Richmond Council. You're looking at profit organisations like L&Q or A2 Dominion to be in partnership with, who are in it to make a profit.
It's the developer partners, which RHP will continue to own and manage the buildings. They've already set out what they're proposing. You know that the people who are the leaseholders, they will be asked to sell back their flats to RHP.
But you only offer a market rate, but what you offer them and then what you build to replace them are of higher value.
Yes.
And you've got people that will never ever be able to own 100% of a house again. Or a flat.
That may be the situation because they are.
Let her answer that.
Yeah, it may be the situation because the new flats, when they are offered their new flats, they will be a much higher specification flat, and so they will cost more. But what RHP has promised is that there will be a shared ownership scheme, so that nobody is disadvantaged by this. So the people who are renting currently will continue to rent from RHP.
Right,
the people who own or have or paying mortgages on their flats at the moment, they will be invited to sell back their flats and buy them back. And that clearly is going to be an issue for some people, because they're going to look at it and say, yes, but I'm now having to pay much more for my flat. But they will have a much higher quality, much higher spec flat.
Do let me give you figures.
It's on the website.
A flat was bought for £365,000. It was a 3-bedroom masonette, and the person had to move into a 2-bedroom property that he now only owns 68% of. He only ever paid £10 a year ground rent. That has been inflated to £100.
You're talking about Acton?
I am talking about Acton, but it's on the same...
That's not what's happening in Ham.
It is. You've told people to go and look at South Acton.
Yeah.
And his service charge.
It's not the same. Yeah. It's not the same approach at all. It's not going to happen in Ham. They've been completely upfront about how they're going to to operate. It's on the website. There have been lots and lots of consultations about it where it's all been laid out. People have seen what the deal will be. There will be more affordable housing built. There'll be
That's affordable. That's
more,
20% under the national average for renting via an estate agent.
And more housing for affordable rent, and the affordable rent will be within the rent which which will be covered by housing benefit. So we will find that the people who come to live on Hand Close will have an opportunity to either to rent or to buy housing which they might not otherwise have been able to do. And we do have an enormous housing problem in Hand.
Can I just throw in, I understand there's no one from RHP here tonight, so obviously they would be someone who could answer these questions. Well, as I understand it, there isn't a developer yet, because they haven't chosen one yet, and this Faraday thing, which I don't fully understand either, has put a spanner in the works of that happening. So, yes, the developer isn't yet in play. Was Anna going to say something?
Hello. So I am a council employee, but I am the programme manager on the council side for the Ham Close development. So we work with, obviously on the councillors, but with RHP. So just a couple of points. Absolutely right. The 3 developers that RHP did have shortlisted, they were procured under the old procurement. So RHP are now starting completely afresh with a whole new process, which will mean that there are currently no developers that they have procured. There are no developers lined up for them to work with.
There's no development. You have no developers, there's no development.
We have no developers, therefore there's no contract, but the development is very much still happening. And what the council is doing is working through some legal agreements. One is about the land sale that we need to put in for it to happen. And 2 is exactly about the affordable housing, what that looks like, what the numbers are, and how we will work with RHP to make this happen. So all of that work has been going on for a long time now, and we were getting very close to signing the documents when unfortunately the Faraday case meant that RHP had to look at their procurement all over again. So all of that has happened, and it is very much still in train, and we are rolling along, but unfortunately RHP have to now re-procure their developer partner. So that bit is taking some time for them. However, as Councillor Frost says, if you go onto the hamclose.co.uk website, you can see the tenant strategy and exactly how RHP have laid out what would happen if your flat, the flat that you owned now, was 300 grand and comes back as 400 grand, what that means for you as a tenant, what that means if you're a leaseholder. It's all laid out very clearly on the website, and has to be before the council will sign any legal agreements with them for the development to happen. So it is very transparent, and RHP are the only housing association involved, and they will be, and the developer partner that they bring on board will be to deliver the regeneration, and will take a role in the market housing element of it, but all of the affordable housing will be retained by RHP ultimately. So I work for the council. So I'm a council employee that works with RHP on the development, yeah.
Can you give the microphone back to ask the question? And I have seen your hand up at the back on the other side. I have seen you. Oh, and one there, right.
I just wanted to make a point. I'm a Hand Close resident. I live on the top floor, one of the blocks, and with the affordable housing rent, I'm between 3 flats. We all have exactly the same flats, yet my rent is almost triple what theirs is because I'm on an affordable rent tenancy scheme. So I just want to make it aware that not everyone's the same. My neighbour's rents are all £400, even the one with a 3-bed, 2-bed on £1,200 a month. As a single parent with 3 children. So like she said, with the rent and stuff, they've got to take into consideration everyone's different. And not, because they told me the rent would still go up.
Yeah, the affordable rent, or as they say, the affordable rent for everyone is 20% under the market value of what you would pay at an estate agent.
Don't get me wrong, I want the new build to go ahead. I would love a new flat, being a family on the top floor. But to pay the extortionate amount of rent that I'm paying compared to the 16 other people in my block.
So just to pick up those two questions, to ask either Councillor Frost or yes, has there been any guarantee that rents will not go up significantly, or could rents go up significantly? I didn't quite gather whether that's in the plan or not.
Well, one of the things which our resident at the back has pointed out is that at the moment, because people have come into the Ham Close development at different points and different times, they are paying under different rent schemes. And I think one of the things that RHP hopes to do is to get, to sort of get this properly organised so that people are actually paying a clear rent. There may be some increase in the rent, as I understand it, but they're very cognizant of the fact that that Ham Close, people who are renting on Ham Close, if they're renting from RHP, they are social tenants, and that their rent must be covered by the housing benefit. And as far as I understand it, and this is what I've been told, that rents will not be higher than that.
Sorry, can you wait for the mic? Here it comes.
So does that mean people that are paying rent under an old tenancy to Richmond Council,
You're not paying Richmond Council?
Sorry,
Yeah,
wait, let her finish.
but the thing is, they had their original tenancy from Richmond Council transferred to RHP with no increase. Now this young lady here, as she stated, there's 16 people in the block. There's people that are paying 400, she's paying 1,400. So does that mean that the people who are on the £400 are going to come in line with this lady that's paying £1,400 under RHP, which is a housing association, not a social landlord?
I really have to leave that one with RHP to sort out, because obviously we don't have somebody from RHP here tonight, and so they're not able to talk about the rents and how the rents are organised.
Can I just interject? There are Ham Close stakeholder meetings, which I know that a lot of the councils attend, various members from the local community men, Ham Close Residents Association attend. These are all the kind of questions that, being very detailed, are probably more appropriate for that time. I'm not sure how Ham Close residents are made aware of them, but I hope that they are. I believe RHP is in touch with them. There's a resident association, and I hope that the next one that will be probably happening in about 2 months' time, that you would come, and if your questions haven't been answered before then by direct contact with RHP, that you come then and ask those questions there. I'm sorry that we can't be more helpful tonight, but that kind of detail is not something that as councillors we can necessarily answer at this precise moment in time.
I believe that the number of residents is due to increase quite considerably. Can you tell me how many?
Well, it's going at the moment. You've got 192 units there, and in order to make the rebuild sufficiently viable, the current estimate is of 525. Is it?
452. 452.
452. Right.
Well, you could have started a very bad rumour going there. Right. Well, the lady in the pale coat.
Hello, my name's Tina Wars, and I just want to follow on from what this lady's just asked, which is really about what planning and mapping goes on in the long term for the pressure on the area in terms of school places, midwives, health visitors, social workers, doctors, that sort of thing in hospital, inpatient attendances at A&E and so on. How much long-term planning takes place to allow for this kind of expansion, and where can we have a say or have input into that?
Thank you.
I think, unfortunately, the long-term planning doesn't necessarily take place as much as we would like it to. I think maybe people are aware that there's also a lot of development going on in Kingston. There's a hell of a lot of flats coming into Kingston, as well as a much smaller amount coming into Ham. There are issues in terms of pressure on trains. I don't know how many of you get South Western trains, but I know that there are problems there. There is talk of Crossrail 2, but that's some way away. In terms of the schools,
can I pick up?
You can pick up on the schools, yeah.
Because I don't think we should sort of be panicking about school places, because we've got 3 primary schools just in our local area, which is sort of an unusually large number of schools. They're all single form entry, which is again unusual. It's very, very rare nowadays to have single form entry schools. When the Russell School had its rebuild, the original plans were to make that 2 form entry. And that was scaled back to 1.5 form and then back to 1 form entry. But that can be extended. Meadlands has got a lot of space and is quite interested, I think, overall in at some point in their future going to 2 form entry, because it just makes schools much more economically viable to have additional numbers in, because they've got the same on costs, and they've having more students, having more pupils in does help bring a bit of money into the coffers.
And health,
yeah. I was at the last Ham stakeholders meeting, and there is a very underused clinic in Ham, and there is talk of trying to persuade a firm of general practitioners to use that establishment when it gets redeveloped, because that's part of the Ham redevelopment. But as a council, we can ask and persuade GPs to try and open up there, but it's up to the GP providers to actually open a unit there.
And so going back to the transport quickly, I do know that RHP did apply to the Communities Department for money to look at extending the 371 in terms of increasing the frequency of it, but unfortunately I think because the project got delayed, the money wasn't found for it. So RHP is aware, the council is aware of the pressures, and we will do what we can. I mean, part of the reason for doing the livable neighbourhood bid here, sadly again was not successful, was because we're aware of the pressures on the Petersham Road. We know that the area struggles and people are heavily reliant on cars. It's not that we're unaware, we are all aware, and we're all trying to do whatever we can to do it, but unfortunately there does seem to be this bizarre thing that sort of the houses go, this happens not just here but everywhere across the country. Houses go in first, and then they go, oh yeah, let's put in some doctors and some roads and stuff. But I think as councillors and as council, I have to say we are all looking at it as best we can.
I mean, I guess just one.
Sorry, microphone. Sorry.
Last time. My response to that really is around what we can do locally to influence, rather than that pressure planning, that we actually plan for those periods and how we can look for funding for certain, in certain areas where there's going to be a need, and that we can identify the needs, project the needs in the future. I think that's really worthwhile putting some effort into that.
I think it is being very carefully worked on, actually, because I'm just thinking back to all the workshops we had a couple of summers ago when the plans were being drawn up. And I don't know who else can remember. Justine, can you remember those? The workshops, we were spending time looking at enormous charts of traffic flow and looking at numbers and looking at health and all of that. And so a lot of planning has gone into this, and I think that planning it hasn't gone away. It's still there, and the point where Ham Close, the new scheme, goes to planning, it will be subject to significant consultation at that point.
Okay, thank you for that. And then lady in the blue.
I've got 2 points. The 371 double deckers are only supposed to run when It's busy times. They run continuously. I live on the 371 route.
So do I, and I often get 371, and there's not always a double decker on the 371.
It's not always, but a good majority of the time there is. And my second point is, the houses on Ham Close, you said there's going to be 520.
No, 452 is the maximum.
452 maximum. Let's just say, I've been sitting here reading your sign over there, no idling. There's going to be at least one car per family, or 2 cars per family. I don't understand your sign.
You're a solution to an area. This is still a Greenbelt village.
The way development works these days is they don't, as far as my understanding is the London plan, which is drawn up by the London Assembly and by the Mayor's office, the Mayor of London, does not allow for one car per dwelling anymore. So there will not be 1 car per dwelling because they actually will not be putting in the parking for that. And I understand that. We understand the pressures on the Petersham Road. That's why we looked at doing the livable neighbourhood bit. That's why I support putting in a bridge from Ham over to St Margaret's. And the idling is a separate thing completely, because whether if you let me finish, you can drive a car, but you don't have to leave it on when you're sitting at a red light or at a railway station or dropping your kid off illegally on the zigzag lines. The point is, if you let me finish, the point is just to stop, to ask people to turn off their engines whenever they can and not leave them idling. Do you know where the worst place for pollution is? Inside your car. Actually sitting in your own car, you are breathing in more pollution than anyone standing or cycling on the road around you. So the best thing to do is actually to walk and cycle and get on a bus or get on a train if you can. And that's what we need to be encouraging people to do. The Mayor of London is aiming to get all 80% of all transport journeys in London, to make them get by public transport and cycling and walking in the next few years. At the moment it's at 63%. We are a little bit unusual out here because we are in a more rural area and we are more reliant on our cars. But actually, as time goes on, we can't keep using cars. We are going to have to move towards more active health, more active forms of transport, which is better for everyone at the end of the day. So I understand your concerns over cars, but having an idling thing, those two things are not related. That's behaviour. You can drive a car, but you don't have to leave it switched on when you're at a railway line.
You have made the point well, councillor.
But you're bringing a great volume of transport into a village where you've quite openly stated that we're quite lucky that we've got 3 primary schools within such a small area. Yeah. Is it not going to have an impact?
I think what the councillors are saying is that they know there's going to be an impact. They're going to try and minimise the impact. They're trying to plan for the impact. What we've heard earlier is that the impact has been delayed yet again by circumstances actually beyond their control. So we'll probably be having this discussion again in a year's time, sadly. I think we need to move on from Ham Close unless there's some brilliant new insight or nobody else actually wants to talk about anything else. But we have gone around the Ham Close issue a lot. There will be, I am sure, another meeting coming soon of that group specifically to discuss Ham Close. I wasn't at the last one, the one before, and there is plenty of opportunity to ask questions and to discuss and to quiz the RHP people who are not here tonight. So I do encourage you to attend those. But last question there, and then other topics. Yes, sir. You'll come next.
Just wanted to say about the parking and not using the cars. You go down Sandy Lane on a Saturday or a Sunday and it's chock-a-block with people coming out of the area for the football.
Yeah.
Is there anything that can be done about that?
What can we do? You want to put I've tried to get more double lines, yellow lines put in various parts of Ham, and residents say no, I don't want them. So the problem is you all have, a lot of people, they have their cars. You all want to use them. Being blunt, you don't want anyone else to use their cars and come into your area. Everyone here, a lot of people here, everyone I speak to gets fed up of air pollution, gets fed up of people driving, but they won't get out of their own car as well. I'm being really blunt, and I'm just going to say it like it is. Everyone expects everyone else to stop driving. I'm really sorry, but we all have to stop driving. We all have to use public transport. We all have to use different ways of getting around because it's safer and healthier for everyone. And that way we won't have kids growing up with 10% less lung capacity because of air pollution. We won't have kids' mental capacity affected by air pollution. We won't have the asthma rates that we see in school. Kids, a third of kids have asthma pumps. None of us here grew up like that, did we? There's a little girl died a few years ago because of asthma, and that just last week, the courts found that she died because of air pollution. 10,000 people have early deaths every year in London alone, 40,000 across England and Wales because of air pollution. So I'm really sorry, I am going to tell everyone to get out of their cars because we are literally killing ourselves. It causes Alzheimer's, it causes dementia, it causes asthma, it causes reduced lung capacity. We have to be doing something. Yes, those people come down on a Saturday and they park their cars and they take their kids to the football. Yes, we drive into Richmond Station because it's easier than getting on the bus. Every car that gets on the road stops the bus from going faster. Sorry, you've really push my buttons this evening.
Can we also just bear in mind that the reason that the Sandy Lane gets a bit blocked up on a Saturday and a Sunday is because hundreds of kids are coming down to play football, organised football, boys and girls, on Bull Meadow, and actually I think that's great. I'm sorry they have to come in the car, but it's terrific that they're playing sport, and it's...
I'm going to stop the discussion there because I said that was going to be the last question. Councillor Freeze has opened up a whole new can of worms, and I'm just putting the lid back on. We'll come back to it in a minute if you'd like to, but I'm going to let this gentleman ask his question about something entirely different, and then we'll see if we want to talk about air pollution again. Sir.
Yes, thank you. So I have two questions I would like to raise. One is regarding cycling.
Yep.
So I am one of the, I guess, lucky ones that is able to cycle to work because I work in Richmond and I cycle every day, 25 minutes. And I wanted to ask, so there is this Cutthroat Alley.
Cutthroat Alley, yeah, I know it.
And then you have the Ham Avenue. And if you, basically, if you come in late at night, it's just, you can't see anything. Yes, you do have headlights and everything. Is it possible, would it be possible to put maybe some reflectors there, just at least to guide the path, or maybe some lights?
No, we can't have lights.
No lights.
Can't do lights on it because it is it's a protected area.
We could do reflectors, though.
On the ground, possibly.
On the walls, so you can see it. So you can see the wall.
Walls are grade 1 listed, believe it or not. Can't fix things to them. We could possibly think about getting some. But I cycle at night up through Cutthroat Alley, and if you're careful, you don't hit the wall.
I didn't say I was hitting the wall.
I was thinking, is your second question about the mud? Because when it's raining, it's just full of mud.
It's not muddy anymore, it's been surfaced. We've done it.
They're trying to guess your second question. Would you like to ask your second question?
My second question is not related to cycling. It's actually related to recycling.
Well, hang on a second then. Are you happy with the answer to the... I mean, you're not happy with the answer, but do you think they've given you as good an answer as you can get on Cutthroat Alley?
Well, I understand the walls are listed, but maybe on the ground, if you can put some, same as you would on, streets, some tiny cat eyes. Yeah.
Cat eyes.
Well done.
So,
yes.
A suggestion. So.
Okay. Second question.
Second question about recycling. So, is there any reason why in Ham there aren't recycling points for plastic? So we have lots of paper recycling and lots of clothing and shoes, and plastic, it's like a taboo topic because you see lots of people dumping plastic in wherever they can. So for example, this, just looking at my map now, the Woodfield Center, lots of people just come with the cars, and I've seen it happening loads of times. They just open the trunk and start putting plastic and glass, and basically, because you can find there some recycling for that, but anywhere else it's only paper and basically clothing. So, can we do anything else, anything to improve plastic recycling in here?
We have a plastic recycling scheme for people's houses. I think the only reason why plastic doesn't exist is because there's really no market for it. There's market for waste paper and there's a market for glass, but the plastic stuff, they haven't really built up an infrastructure to actually get rid of it.
Okay, so for example, I live in St. Richard's Court, so right here, and there is no plastic recycling. Nothing.
Is that the
Nothing. So basically.
So can we ask for the council to extend the recycling scheme to flats as well?
My understanding was that, so recently we did some work on getting food waste recycled at flats, and I've been trialling that because we understood that was the only one that wasn't recycled. And my understanding is that you should have a black box and a blue box, and one is for paper and cardboard and the other one is for plastic and glass. And if you're not getting that, then you should be getting that, because the council is meant to supply that to every single dwelling, whether it's a flat or a house. And if you're not, then you need to go onto the richmond.gov.uk website, look at the section on waste and recycling, and ask to get your whichever box it is you don't have, because the council does work very hard to try and recycle everything that it can. So, do you not have separate boxes at the moment for putting your waste into? Do you only have
I live in a flat, but
they should still.
Basically, you only have a dumpster for general waste. Actually, 2 dumpsters for general waste. That's it. So that's why I'm asking about plastic, in particular glass and plastic. It's just.
Which flats do you live in?
St. Richard's Court. So
okay, St. Richard's Court.
Street, above the shops.
Yeah, it is. That is probably the most difficult area, the above the shops one for collecting from. But we certainly the intention is to get as much doorstep collection as possible, and to try and move away from the large bins, because they do get they get fly tipped so easily, and so they're not. The council isn't keen on making additional large standalone bins for recycling.
At the end of the day, we'll look into it and see what we can do to see about getting that changed.
Okay, thank you.
Right, the gentleman at the back, is this a different topic, or are we still on recycling? Okay.
You touched on rubbish, right? I understand there's a recycling element of it, but there's also the rubbish that's dumped. Can you, as a council, enforce big fines for people that leave rubbish? Because when you look at the cleanest countries in the world, they have tremendous fines for people who leave rubbish. Why don't you just put £1,000 up if someone drops a bag with dog poo or rubbish? And I'm sure that at some point people will start.
You have to catch them, and you have to have the evidence before you can get them fined. And that is a problem. When if the council can, and they do go through fly tip very carefully to see if they can find anybody's name and address that they can identify. Where they can, they'll fine, but so often they can't.
But do we have the first thing is to start with a very high fine. Is it the case?
There are fines for fly tipping, but I can't remember.
Because as a community we can contribute, right, to making sure that the people are identified and caught. I don't think people are aware they have to pay so much.
Got information, pass it through.
Lady on this side in the second row.
It's about safety on the towpath when walking due to the cyclists. Is there going to be a sort of area where the cyclists can have one lane and the walkers can have another? Because the cyclists can come up, when you're walking, the cyclists can come up very fast and sometimes even brush you. And they don't ring bells, half of them, and it's really quite scary.
It's not really wide enough for.
No, I know. I know
for two paths.
But is there anything we can do to make it safer and more pleasurable?
It's a difficult one. I was told by Martin Ellingall that due to the...
What is it?
Martin Ellenborn told me that you couldn't put shared signs up there.
Oh, what, on the towpath?
On the towpath.
Yeah, because you're not actually supposed to cycle on the towpath. Because so if you put up a shared path sign, then you're condoning cycling on the towpath. But everybody does cycle on the towpath because it's such a good way of getting backwards and forwards. We just really need to remind people to be considerate when they're cycling.
Well, if you put up a sign saying sort of please be considerate, then that's kind of telling people that where they don't see the sign that they don't need to be considerate.
Even if it could just be known that the cyclists cycle on the right and the walkers on the left, or the other way round. Even that would help.
Unfortunately, as this has come up recently, and there's a social media site called Nextdoor, and I did put a post on that about using the towpath and everyone trying to be nice to each other, and cyclists to ring their bells, because it is frustrating for people who suddenly get whizzed past when somebody comes past. As a cyclist myself, I've had two things. I've had people shout at me for ringing my bell because they've given somebody a fright for doing so. Sorry, and then I've had other people say thank you for ringing the bell. So it works both ways. And conversely, I've also learned quite early on to move out of the way if there are any small children on the path, because believe you me, they don't know that you're coming. And the other one is dogs. And if an owner calls their dog, you're more likely to get knocked off your bike than if they don't. I've actually had someone call their dog. I had a big bunch of tulips in it, and I got knocked completely off my bike because the dog ran in front of me. I think it's one of those things, it's a bit like everyone on the road. Everyone's using a shared space. We all just need to be kinder and more thoughtful to everyone. I understand that a lot of people don't like cyclists going too fast, and that's what the point of putting this post on Nextdoor, and we're trying to do sort of social media on it, and to generally raise awareness and just be considerate of other people. But unfortunately, trying to separate lanes for people, it doesn't work, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
Well, and also, particularly if people have a dog or a small child, they don't necessarily keep to the lane either.
No.
Well, I would hope so cyclists wouldn't career down there as fast as they can, because if you want to go as fast as you can, you should use the road.
Yeah. Were there other topics which we have not covered which people wish to raise? Lady over there.
It's sort of related to cars, but it's about the yellow lines, double yellow lines that have been put in on Ham Common next to the new inn, on the corner. Cars always park there. I think there's a big, I don't know whether it's a home or a business, but they seem to have lots of cars. Now the problem is, you've moved the car, you've stopped the cars from parking there, and they're now all parking on Ham Common. It's absolutely chocker, right by the pond. So the problem's just moved on to Ham Common itself, right by the pond. So the pollution and the wildlife there are being affected by all the people who are coming into that area every day. They're not. I don't think they're residents. I think they're people who work in those businesses and buildings all along there. And they used to park, presumably, straight outside, but now that's been moved on.
A couple of things. So I was a bit involved in some of that early on. Part of the reason for putting the double yellow lines outside the new inn was that you couldn't get emergency access down there. Couldn't get a fire engine down there. So that's why we had to do that, because for a safety point of view. And then even if they could get down there, they then couldn't turn down into Bishop's Close. And that was why we've had to do that. At the moment, the works going on outside the convent have got special dispensation to allow for their access, so that they're not allowing parking along there during working hours. So what's happened is you then, as we know, have got people moved up to outside, further up Ham Common, closer to the pond, closer to the church, closer to the houses there. We've been in touch with some of the residents there who have asked to get double yellow lines put along there, particularly around the corners of the road, because there's issues with visibility and sight lines, and you do have a problem with people coming out, and you've got a whole run of cars and you can't see, and you've got, I was there talking about this just a couple of weeks ago, and you've got cars trying to come out, people coming down, you've got cars stopping. You've also got the issue of children cycling down that way. My own son cycled that way, and that was partly how I became aware of it. The problem there was because my older son was telling me that he's 17 and he feels quite vulnerable now cycling along that stretch. And that was actually one of the things we wanted to talk about tonight, was that we spoke to council officers. They proposed to put double yellow lines along, so I guess this side where the church is, but only so that on this side of Ham, so not on the Ham Common side, but on the church side of Ham Common, along where you've got the access into the houses, but on the corners, to improve the sight lines there. And it'd be interesting to know what people think about that, because we were undecided, and we wanted to bring that up tonight actually to see what people thought, whether that's something they wanted to see. We can get it done immediately as a temporary measure. We could alternate, and that wouldn't necessarily make it permanent, but it could be done temporarily while the works are going on. Or we could look at doing a consultation now, but that would take longer to implement, and then it would be a permanent thing. So I'd be interested to hear what people think about that issue.
The alternative could be that rather than just putting double yellow lines, to have single yellow lines, and then a period of time when you're not allowed to park, say for instance between 10 and 12 weekdays, something like that, which would stop the commuter parking. So we would be interested to hear. So if you've got either thoughts about either of those suggestions or any other ideas, then do let us know.
Lots of exercise tonight, Ellie. Yeah. Question over on the far side in the blue. Oh, a comment. Hold on a second. There you are.
On junctions, you're not supposed to park within 10 metres of a junction anyway. So why can't we get a parking attendant around there all the time?
I mean, if you see a parking infringement, then there is the phone number for parking enforcement.
Yeah, but parking on them junctions of where you're talking about is a parking infringement. Yeah. So instead of putting double yellow lines in there, let's just get a parking attendant there.
We don't have enough parking attendants to have.
I can tell you, I call them when people double park or put two wheels on the pavement down my road, and they come.
Yeah, well,
and they were there, so why can't we do that? Why they're parking there?
That's what I'm suggesting you do, that if you see a parking infringement, then do get in touch with them and they will come. But they're not just sort of constantly cruising around Ham, unfortunately. We just don't have enough personnel for that.
Okay.
Hi, sorry, Maddie Roberts. A bit unrelated to that. A few years ago in Petersham magazine, I'm sure I saw an artist impression of the area outside Tesco's, and they were going to regenerate. I just wondered what happened to that, and if it's in the pipeline anywhere. I'm sure obviously it's money, but a while ago, St Richard's had one of those play scheme days. It was just a couple of hours, a couple of weeks ago, and it was just fantastic. And it would be so nice if we could. I don't know if that was part of your Liverpool plans.
Yeah, Liverpool neighbourhood bid did cover St Richard's, yes. And the other thing is, so community funding, which I think some of that's been talked about tonight. The forum put in a bid to do a consultation on St Richard's, and that was the image that you saw was something that we drew up just to show what it could look like. Unfortunately, that bid was up against the Grey Court bid for money to redo the changing rooms. So the changing rooms at Grey Court got the money rather than the bid for St Richard's. It is something we'd like to see done, but again, a bit like, hopefully sooner than the bridge, but a bit like the Liverpool neighbourhood bid, it was part of that. That area does need an uplift, so does Ham. Ham Parade needs an uplift. So we are looking at ways to deal with it, and if we can find money, then we will absolutely do something about it. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Penny, to that?
Oh, I was so sad that we didn't get the money for the feasibility study, because I think there's so much potential there, and especially now we've got Ronnie and his golden pretzel, and we're well away, and I think that there's many opportunities there for sort of developing that area. So let's hope. Oh, Justine, were you going to say something? Yeah, she was.
Justine, just so you know, sits on the neighbourhood forum, but is also our resident-friendly neighbourhood planner, as it were, and guru for making places more livable in, as it were.
So my name's Justine Langford. I was just going to pick up, really on behalf of the forum, that question about improving the area, because the neighbourhood plan recently was voted on by residents and is now come into force. So now the neighbourhood plan will be used when the council make planning decisions. So they will need to look to that first, and that was written by the forum, by the drafting team, which I was a member. But we had workshops, a series of workshops throughout the last couple of years, 3 years, where we were talking to residents, and then we've incorporated those ideas into the neighbourhood plan. And what happened was we had a series of comments which you'd call policy, so that's policy on which planning decisions are made, and there were lots of other comments which you'd probably call projects, not policy. And improving St Richard's was one of them, and also following on from something that Andre obviously feels very passionate about, enabling people to actually leave their car at home needs good infrastructure. We can't leave our cars at home, and that's why actually the towpath is quite important for cycling, because the alternative is the Petersham Road. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to take my child on the Petersham Road when I'm cycling to Richmond. So now the plan has come into force. The forum are now thinking, okay, so now we need to think about what our role is moving forward. And one of them, I think, is to welcome ideas for projects, and actually to see how we can work with the council as a community to try and get funding directed our way. So I think that's going to be an important role for the forum. I'll do a little plug for our AGM. It's on the 6th sorry, not the 6th, is it? The 4th. It's on the 4th of June here in the church. We are going to have a talk by the two consultants who worked on the feasibility study which led to the livable neighbourhood bid. So they'll talk about livable neighbourhoods and how we can improve our area so that it does enable us for not only us to leave our cars at home and use more sustainable methods, but also people visiting to be able to come and visit us by walking and cycling and using public transport. So we can reduce congestion and we can reduce pollution and car use in our area by not only us but also our visitors.
Thank you, Justine.
Sorry, it's only a quick question. I was a little bit unclear about what you meant by improving St Richard's. Do you mean the school or the area?
The square.
Yeah, the area, where you're, imagine yourself by the shops there, and there's that big sort of brick box with, which is a flower bed, sort of trying to sort of look at that whole area and make it just more attractive and easier to use so that people can sit out and pretend they're in the Mediterranean and all that kind of.
Open the box on teenage crime.
Okay, well, I don't mean it quite like that, but there's a perceived rise in assaults on our local teenagers here, as well as the whole local council. And I know there's a groundswell of Facebook page and Nextdoor are trying to map and plot, the numbers and whether there has been a rise and whether what needs to be done about that in terms of sort of watching out, policing, monitoring more carefully. And I just wondered if you had any comments about that. So it seems right to mention it.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's been quite a lot of more graffiti than last year certainly. And
okay, a couple of things. One, I'm aware of that Facebook page. I have just joined the group. Two, I know that there were a couple of young people assaulted in Richmond Park recently. A gang of eight young people attacked them and stole their phones. And I also know that that this has been happening more and more in Richmond, and there is a feeling that young people in Richmond are being targeted by out-of-borough young people coming in, stealing phones, that kind of thing. I do know, because up until now it seems to be mostly happening in the sort of centre of Richmond, which is the South Richmond ward. I know that the councillors there are very aware of it, and as far as I know, there was money given to that ward because of the filming from Peter Rabbit 2. Was it Peter Rabbit 2? Peter Rabbit, whichever one it was. And my understanding is that the councillors asked for part of that money to go towards mobile CCTV, which can be, am I correct on that? I'm pretty sure I talked with Pamela Fleming about that. So they are looking at getting CCTV so that they can keep an eye on things more. The councillors in that ward are very aware of it, and they are taking action. They are talking to the police about it. And I'm not saying that we're not, but at the moment it hasn't been something that's really been on our radar because it hasn't actually been happening in our ward. This is the first time it's been brought up. And the second thing is my understanding is that at the budget, didn't we get more money to look at crime in that as well? Do you know?
Yes. Yeah, there are programmes to try and work on gangs and knife crime, and particularly working in secondary schools to try to identify where we've got possibility of youngsters being intimidated by gangs, etc. So this is being followed up, and I know from my role with in safeguarding that we have a youth offending team that works very closely with the young people who are who find themselves being arrested for criminal activities, particularly if they're children in care, and so they're very closely monitored, and the people who are working in that area are monitoring for gang activity and so forth.
Okay, we're coming towards a wrap-up, but there's a question over there.
It just makes, I'd like to run that in, that maybe there should be somewhere for the teenagers to go, which, why can't the council fund and get the boxing club up and running again at the Ham Village Centre, and invest more money and keep that open for the people of the community?
Yes, good idea. I've just been down to Ham Youth Centre, which is
not the youth centre, the village centre.
Yeah, no, I know. The village centre we have no control over because it's owned by a charitable organisation. The council is not going to buy it because it's too expensive.
Well, it's owned by the community.
That's a separate discussion you're going to have with somebody else, because that is not for us. We don't own it. But as I was going to say, Ham Youth Centre does put on a lot of activities. I was down there just the other week. There were kids playing badminton in there. There were kids making music in there. There are kids doing Duke of Edinburgh in there. There are lots of different activities going on. They have bike rides and stuff that they're doing. I know that Ben Skelton does a great job doing stuff in the Ham Youth Centre there and across the borough. Currently looking for funding to try and get a new bus. I don't know about boxing, not something I know about, but I do know that the youth services that are provided are put on in response to what the young people want. If you want to talk about Ham Village Centre, that's a whole other discussion. There's nothing. We can't take that on. It's not something the council has responsibility for. That's an issue to be dealt with by the local community and the trustees of Ham Village Centre.
But the point of these meetings is that your comment has been recorded on TV as well.
Some of my emails to both the councillors sat at the front.
Right. But this time we all know that you've made that comment, and it's been noted and publicly heard that that's an idea that will now be given more consideration. Hey, just at the back on the end.
Hi, I'm part of the HVC, and it's not actually owned by the people of Ham. It wasn't owned by nobody. It wasn't owned by nobody. It was opened up, moved from New Road to the Royal Oak, and with people that using it, it can't carry on. It's in severe debt. And three things are going to happen. Number one, it's going to be brought by local authority, which they've just said can't be done. Number two, a private buyer is going to come in and buy it. Or number three, it goes to auction, because you've got so much debt now that we're holding off people coming in to collect those debts, but it can't be held off.
Okay, I'm going to close that discussion down because the councillors can't really contribute to this because it's not going to go anywhere. But you've made your point, and thank you. But they can't really take that any further. No. A question there and a question at the front.
Yeah, it was just a quick one about, and I might have missed something about this, is that the youth club that's currently there, is that in Cork going to be rebuilt when they redo the Ham Close development?
Yes, it is, absolutely.
Yeah, good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, that was an easy one to answer. May your question be just as simple.
I think my question's just as simple. I'm really worried about the graffiti in the area. Gareth, you just mentioned about it. Is graffiti the same tag everywhere, on trees, going down to Tenton Lock? It's on walls, it's everywhere, bus stops. The bus people, they're replacing the broken glass and things, and the next day it's happened again.
We have to hope that the person who's doing it will either get bored or get caught.
Well, we were told years ago that they can see the people in school, they can see the tags that these people are putting, the graffiti artists. They often put it on their exercise books at school. Has anybody been into the local schools to see? Or?
I don't know if we'd be allowed to do that.
There was Grey Court used to do that. They used to have a graffiti sort of encyclopedia, but I think they've stopped doing that now. And it's very time consuming, but obviously it's great if you can track down some of these young villains. The graffiti team are very good at cleaning off our graffiti, and they also liaise with BT if it's a phone box and TFM if it's a bus stop. But we do our best to keep it down, and in fact it has. I was talking to the graffiti team just a little while ago, and it has certainly dropped it back a lot since Easter, so let's hope it will stay.
The other thing is to say that unless the graffiti team have permission to remove the graffiti, they can't do so.
Yeah.
So if it's private, you can. So if you were to report graffiti seen on a fence, the team will come round. If they can get hold of the owner, they will then remove it, but if they can't, then they can't. So that's why some get stayed in place. But as I said, there are various ways of doing it. There are phone numbers, you can go online and report it. And I've reported, I know all three councillors have been reporting it ourselves. We've brought it up with council officers, and we are very much aware at the moment, and we know it looks horrible, and we're doing our best. But please do report it the minute you see it. And they will charge anyone that they find. They will fine them if they catch them doing it. They will also find shops selling underage people graffiti spray cans. So the mechanisms are in place. Just we've had a bit of a twit.
Very last, final, ultimate question, comment at the back.
Yes, it's regarding this lady's comment about this one particular tag, which we've all seen all along Ashburn Road and so on. I have seen online a piece of home video which actually caught a sight of the person doing this tag opposite Meadland School, and it wasn't a young child, it was a man, a young man, probably in his 20s or so. So the sort of school element is probably not relevant.
No.
Right.
Have you sent this through? Have you sent it through to the council?
I'm going to have to think where I saw it, but I saw it on. Sorry?
If you can track it down, send it through because they will follow it up.
Yeah,
it's on next door, but it's not a very good image.
Yeah, it doesn't show him very clearly, but you do see the general age of the person.
Okay, thank you.
And that lady in the corner was be rude to, as both hands went up at the same time.
Yes, thank you. I would like to ask if there's any sort of thought about reducing the speed limit in Sandy Lane, because the cars drive so very fast especially when it's sort of dusk or early in the morning. So has that been, thought about? 20 miles?
We're bringing 20 mile an hour to the whole borough, so Sandy Lane will get there whenever it's due to.
You just said whenever. Do you know when roughly that is?
The leader of the council is at the back.
Ballpark. This year, next year?
Hello. We're putting together a schedule. I cannot give you a firm date, but we are hoping to get it rolled out as soon as possible, because the sooner we get 20 mile an hour on our streets, the sooner we can make them safer, the sooner we can stop horrendous accidents, and the sooner we can start saving lives on our roads. So the sooner we can get it through, the better.
Thank you. Now, Penny Frost, I believe, is going to speak to us about ward budgets.
And I'm going to make this
very wrapping up.
Yes. So basically, I think you see over there are some examples of some of the ways in which money, neighbourhood community money has been spent on local projects. Now, part of the intention of the Liberal Democrat Council when they came in was to say that the money which is going to be spent on budgets falling in particular wards, really we should make it possible for local wards, local communities to have their say in shaping the decisions. So we, and that formed part of our council's corporate plan. So that is coming in next year, and there's going to be the funding streams, which some of which you'll know already. You'll know about Civic Pride. You'll know the Community Fund. They're going to be brought together in local areas. I mean, particularly for Ham and Petersham, because we have a neighbourhood plan. We have a particular sort of approach to how our neighbourhood money is used. But the key to the success of this is going to be community engagement. So we want to hear from you, and you've got opportunities there. Just when we wrap up, you've got opportunities to nip across there and leave notes, and you can always email us to say things that you would like to see our neighbourhood community funding being spent on. Obviously it won't be an enormous amount of money, and we don't know exactly how much it will be as yet. But when we know what our ward budgets are, we will be keen to hear from you to find out what you want this money to be spent on in your locality. So to leave it at that.
So can I thank you all very much for your questions? Can I, on your behalf, thank our councillors for being willing to sit in front of you and try and answer them. And thank you for coming.
Thank you. And I would... I would just like to add a thank you to the Reverend Simon Coupland for hosting us so well this evening, and for obviously letting us use the church as well. It's very nice to be here, and thank you for your very able chairing this evening.
Oh, sorry, yes, and I was going to say, and I fine Councillor Penny Frost £1 to charity for using the words Liberal and Democrat when we were avoiding politics.
Thanks to all the council officers for...
Yes, indeed, thank you.